Hello everyone, this is Amarpreet Singh back again from Amar's Tech Tuts. It's been a while I've posted any of the DAX videos, but I've been seeing or reading many comments asking me to come back and post more DAX videos. So I've decided to do it much more consistently now. So today's video is all about three of very important all functions that includes all except, and all selected. So we are going to go through all these three functions and find out the difference between these. And let's check with first function, that is called all DAX function. And as the definition suggests, it says it returns all the rows in a table or all the values in a column, ignoring any filters that might have been applied. So what it does is it ignores any external filters or other filters applied on a table set or on a specific column, which helps us to get the final output. So most probably we are going to apply this within a calculate function, and we are going to check out how the output works. So let's begin with all. Let's go to Power BI Desktop. Here we can see I've already imported the same old data set which I had in my previous videos. So the data set just includes some products, the city, the quantity, unit price, address, and date. So I've already imported this into my Power BI Desktop, and I'm just gonna go and bring in a table here. Let me just bring in a table in the Power BI Desktop. So I'm gonna bring in a table, and in this table I'm going to add our basic details first. Like I'll add the city, I'm going to add the product, I'm also going to add the quantity. And let me just bring it a bit down and increase the size under the format. So I need the values font size to be, let me change it to 20. Yep. And probably column header is also 20. So I can see my table available now, and it has the list of all the cities and products sold, including the quantity. Now we're going to build first measure, which is using the all function. So let me create two measures instead. Like the first measure I'll create is to calculate the total quantity, although it automatically comes up here, but I just want to show you the differences when we're using all and without all. So let's just create a measure called total quantity, and we just use our calculate function, and we're going to use a sum function inside, and we're going to select the quantity column. Yeah, so our first measure is created, which says total sums sales quantity. So let me add this measure into our table. So you see there's not much difference right now between quantity and total quantity. So total quantity is just doing the sum of all the quantities and giving us 91 here as well. So let's now use another measure, and in this we are going to use the all function. So let's just create new measure and name it total quantity all. So I'm again going to use the calculate function here, and I'm going to use sum of quantity, yes, and in the filter section of calculate I'm just going to use all function. And when you come here, you can see the syntax for all. you need to provide a table name first, and then you need to provide a column. Column is optional, so we'll see what is the difference between those two. So initially, let's just give the table name itself. So we're going to give the table name sales. Sorry. Yeah. So I see our measure is created here. So we're just calculating the total sales quantity based on this filter, which says all of sales. That means exclude any external filters. So that means exclude any existing filters. Okay. So I've saved this measure. I'm going to bring in this measure quantity into our table, and I just bring this one into our table. So right now, what do you see here? Even though the city and products are different, but still we see the total 91. So what is happening here is it's excluding any of the external filters like city or product, and it's doing the sum of total quantity and giving it in all the rows. So this is how all works. It kind of excludes all the existing filters. Let's just bring in two slicers to test it more. So I'm just going to insert a couple of slicers here. Maybe this is the first slicer. And I'm going to bring in another slicer for, yeah. So the first slicer, we'll just name it for products, or let's do it for city first. And I want to increase the size. I'm just keeping all the options on, select all on under the format values, and I'm just going to increase the size to 20 so that we can see it easily. Yeah, so this is for city, and maybe 15 is okay. Also, I'm going to add another slicer for products here. We can see all the list of products here. Just increase the size a bit, the text size. Yeah, I've changed the size to 15 so that we can see it much more clearly. Just reducing this. So we added two slicers to test how all function reacts. So I'm going to select a specific city here, Montreal. So even though the filter gets applied on the table, we see only Montreal rows because of the slicer, but the quantity still shows of whole table. So in the backend, it's still considering the whole table, irrespective of the filters we are selecting here. What if I add another filter for bike? And now what happens, even though there are two filters applied, one for city, one for product, still the total quantity, all function shows the total value of quantity. It excludes any external filters. It does not let any external filters affect the dataset or table. Hope this is pretty clear. Let's see and create another measure just to test for all. In this case, instead of the table, we'll apply the all filter on a specific column. Let's create another measure using all with just one column from table instead of the whole table. And let's name it total quantity and all call. And we're going to use pretty much the same syntax which we used for all function before. I'm just going to use sum of sales quantity again to get the quantity. And in all function, I'm just going to provide one column name which is sales city instead of the whole table sales. So what's going to happen with this is it's going to consider all the cities irrespective of any external filters. Okay, so let's check this out. So right now this measure is created. I'm going to go to my table, and you see currently no selection has been made in any of the slices, city and product. So let's bring in the new measure we have created, total quantity all column. And right now it looks pretty good, but there is a specific difference. If you see what's happening with Montreal bike, although the quantity of bike in Montreal is 5, what we see here is 17. So where does this 12 come from? We see there is bike in another city called Toronto, and we have 12 bikes in Toronto. So what this all function did here is it did not let any city filter being applied, and it's going to give the total of that product here irrespective of the city. So for Montreal also we are getting 17, for Toronto also we'll get 17 for bike. Let's make it a little more visual. So let's just select bike in the products. So this is what I was trying to explain. Although Montreal only 5 bikes were sold, Toronto only 12 bikes were sold, but this all function on the city, it excludes any filters on the city, so it takes a total of both of them and gives 17 here. It's pretty clear. Now somebody asked me, okay, what happens if somebody applied a filter externally on Toronto? Will it still give 17 or is it going to give 12? So let's check that. Let's apply a filter on Toronto. It's still going to give us 17. So irrespective of any external filters, it's going to consider all the cities. Hope it's clear. Let's go to our second function now, which is also called ALLEXCEPT. So as the definition suggests, it returns all the rows in a table except for those rows that are affected by a specific column filters. So what is going to happen is it's going to consider all the data in a table except a specific column filters which are applied and which are acceptable. So let's just go and create a new measure with this. I'm going to name the new measure as total quantity all except, and we are quickly going to make the calculate function, create the sum of quantity, and I'm going to give all except function here, and I need to provide the table name. So table name is sales, and provide the column name. So I'm going to give city in this case too. Okay. So let's see how this works. I'm going to place in the measure is created. I'm going to bring in the total quantity all except measure into our table now. And let's see what happens here. Oh, okay. So you see we are seeing a specific value different from quantity under Montreal. So under Montreal, we are seeing 23. So what's happening here is it is doing the sum of all the product quantities in Montreal. So under Montreal, we have 3, 5, 15. The total comes to 23. So that is what is coming here. So let's select any specific product here. Let's select basketball. Even though the basketball is selected, but the city which has basketball is still going to give you total sum of all the quantities of all products in that city, Montreal. So it is going to accept all the filters on a city and not have all the filters on other columns. So let's just go and select a city named Montreal. So see what's happening. It's still going to give 23 because it is only going to consider filter on Montreal and it's not going to consider any other filter. It's not going to consider any filter on basketball, bike, car or dog. If I go to Toronto, it gives me the total quantity of Toronto. It's not going to consider any other filter like products, like bike or car. It's going to give the total of that specific city. So only filter which is going to be accepted is city. So in this case, as in this table, we have the city names here. So it is going to show the total quantity of that specific city irrespective of the products. What happens if we remove the city from this table? Let's just remove the city column from this table. You see, the things change now. So it's going to consider all the cities. So total is going to be all the cities product here. Even if I select bike, it's still giving me all the cities total of all products, irrespective of city. So let's just bring back our city back into the table. Okay. Okay. So we understand what happens with ALLEXCEPT is it is going to ignore all the external filters except for city. It's going to filter based on only city and give the quantity based on city. That's it. Unless the table is missing the city, even then it's going to give the total city total. Okay. Let's go for our third and final function under all, which is ALLSELECTED. So as the name suggests, it says like returns all the rows in a table or all the values in a column, ignoring any filters that might have been applied inside the query, but keeping filters that come from outside. So let's try this ALLSELECTED filter, ALLSELECTED function in our DAX. And let's create a new measure. I'm going to name it total quantity all selected. I'm going to use the calculate to calculate the sum of quantity. And I'm going to use under calculate, I'm going to use ALLSELECTED function. As the syntax suggests, we need to provide either a table name or a column name. So let's begin by giving a column name first. So we're going to give ALLSELECTED on sales city. And let's close this. Let's bring this function value, this measure value into our table now. Total quantity all selected, and see what's the difference. Okay, 1 second. Okay, let's see. So right now we see what is happening here is the total quantity all selected shows 3 for basketball, because probably there's only total quantity 3 for basketball. Let's see what is happening for Montreal bike. So for Montreal bike, even though the quantity is 5, we still see total quantity all selected as 17. So what is happening here is whatever column we described in our measure, like in this case we applied all selected on city, it is gonna ignore any internal filters within the visual on that specific column. So in this table, automatically there is a filter on Montreal, but what all selected does is it is going to ignore this Montreal, but it will accept any external filters. So if I select Montreal from external slicer, you see now bike we see as value 5. But what happens with the internal filters on city column? They get neglected. So Montreal city for bike, it's gonna give 17. So what is 17? That is a total sum of bike. If you see 5 in Montreal and 12 in Toronto. So bike sum is 17, and it's gonna give you all the bike quantity here, irrespective of city. It is going to ignore all of this column, Montreal, Toronto, Vancouver, because these are internal visual filters, and we have prescribed specifically all selected sales city. That means ignore the internal filters but keep the external filters. If we apply the filter on city externally from the slicer, it is going to work, and we are going to get the exact quantity for that city for bike. If we apply on another city like Toronto, we see we get the exact quantity, bike quantity for Toronto as well. But if we don't, then we are going to see the total quantity irrespective of city. So we apply another filter on bike product. You see what happened now? Because we have externally provided filter only on bike, it is still going to select, or it is still going to ignore the internal city filters and give us the total sum here of bike irrespective of the city. That's the major use of all selected. But another option is, what if instead of giving just the city, we give the whole table? Then what's going to happen? Let's try that too. So let me go and select all and leave this. Let me go and create another measure. And I'm going to name it all selected table. Okay. And instead of giving city, I'm just going to provide all the table. Let's see what happens then. Second, I'm just going to change the size to value size to maybe 15 or 17 at least. Okay, so that I can see the whole table, what's happening. Okay, so I've created another measure all selected table. Let's bring this also in this table and see what difference does it create with that. I'm just going to remove some of the old measures so that everything is visible on the page. Let me remove total quantity just for okay. Yeah, so what this total quantity all selected table does is it's going to ignore all the filters internally again. So it's going to ignore both city and product. What was happening in case of providing all selected city was it was ignoring only internal city, but now we have given the whole table, so it is going to ignore both Montreal and product basketball, or Montreal and bike both, and it is going to give us total sum of all the products and all the cities. But what happens if we give a filter externally on bike? So now you see it is going to accept bike as a filter, but still not Montreal and Toronto cities as filters, because we have already selected, like bike here, so it's only going to consider bike as a filter, but not Montreal and Toronto, because we have selected all selected total table. It is going to ignore all the internal filters both on city and product. Only external filters work. If you want to make both Montreal and bike work, we need to select Montreal and bike externally both. Now you see the correct quantity. So there could be different use cases where you need to get these kind of measures, and they are pretty useful, and it depends on the requirement. So major difference is, like, all selected does not accept any of the internal visual filters. It only accepts all the external visual filters. Okay. So hope we have understood all the three concepts of all except, and all selected, and what is their use, how we can use them in our measures, or how we can use them in our reports based on the requirements. It was a nice session. I really enjoyed giving this demo here, and please subscribe to my channel. I'm going to come back with much more videos and much more constant supply of knowledge. Thank you.